Raise your hand if you've ever felt lost. Not just, I don't know what to do today, lost, but the kind of lost where you wake up and wonder if you even belong in the life you're living. Maybe you've been told you're not smart enough, not talented enough, not worthy enough. I know that feeling because that was me. At the age of 5, I suffered a brain injury. Teacher said I had a broken brain. I couldn't learn like other kids. I was slow, forgetful, invisible, and for years I believed them. I felt like my dreams were locked in a box I could never open. But here's what I learned: you are not your past. You are not your mistakes. You are not the labels the world has given you. You are not stuck. And in the next 40 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to move from lost to limitless. Not in theory, not in motivation that fades tomorrow, but with tools you can use to break the chains, rewire your brain, and step into the unstoppable version of yourself that has been there all along past. Because here's the truth: it's not about the resources you have. It's about the resourcefulness you unlock. And you are more powerful than you've been led to believe. When I was growing up, I told myself a story, and it wasn't a good one. I repeated it so often it became the lens I saw myself through. I have a broken brain. I can't learn. I'm slow. And here's what I want you to understand. Our brains are always listening to the story we tell them. Your identity is not just something you have. It's something you build every day with the words you choose and the thoughts you feed. The reason so many of us feel lost is not because we don't have the potential, but because we have built an identity around limitation. We've accepted a script someone else wrote for us, and we keep performing that role. When you say, I'm bad with names, your brain believes you and it stops trying. When you say, I'm not creative, you close the door on opportunities before they even knock. But when you decide to reframe that identity, everything begins to shift. I had to stop introducing myself as the boy with the broken brain and start telling myself, I am a fast learner, I am curious, I am unstoppable. That didn't magically make me smarter overnight, but it started rewiring my brain's GPS. Instead of searching for reasons I couldn't, I began to search for ways I could. I want you to think about your own identity, the labels you've accepted, whether from family, teachers, friends, or even yourself. Maybe someone once told you you're lazy. Maybe you've told yourself you're unlucky. Maybe you believe you're too old to start over or too young to be taken seriously. Every time you repeat that belief, you're reinforcing the neural pathways that make it real for you. But here's the science. Neuroplasticity means your brain is always changing. It's always adapting. And the thoughts you feed it are the raw material it uses to build your reality. Change the input, change the output. If you've been feeding it fear, self-doubt, and limitation, of course you feel lost. It's like putting the wrong address into your mental GPS. It doesn't matter how fast you drive, you'll never arrive at the right place. But if you change the address, if you decide, I am resourceful, I am resilient, I am capable, your brain starts mapping routes toward that destination. Let me give you a practical example. I once worked with a young man who kept saying, I'm terrible at public speaking. He said it every time someone asked him to share in a meeting. His heart would race, his palms would sweat, and of course, every experience on stage confirmed that belief. We worked together to change his identity statement. For 30 days, he replaced, I'm terrible at public speaking, with, I'm a confident communicator who gets better every time I speak. At first, he didn't believe it, but he kept saying it. Then, we paired it with small actions, sharing his thoughts in low-pressure settings, practicing with friends, visualizing success. By the end of those 30 days, he wasn't a world-class speaker yet, but he was no longer paralyzed by fear. He had proof that he was becoming what he told himself he was. That's the power of identity. Now, here's the emotional truth. I know some of you have been carrying labels for decades. They might even come from people you love. Sometimes those labels come from a place of ignorance, sometimes from their own fear, and sometimes from their own unhealed pain. But you do not have to live inside someone else's story. You can write your own. And I know the voice in your head might say, but I've failed before. I've tried changing and it didn't stick. Let me tell you, if you failed at changing before, it's not because you're weak. It's because you were trying to change your behavior without changing the identity that drives it. You were trying to force yourself to act like a new person while still believing you were the old one. It's like putting fresh paint over a cracked wall. You have to repair the foundation first. So here's your call to action, and I want you to take this seriously. I want you to banish the label that's been holding you back. You know the one. Write it down on a piece of paper. Look at it. Say out loud, this is not me anymore. Then rip it up. Burn it if you want to. Destroy it physically so your brain has a symbol of letting it go. Then write down your new identity statement, one that reflects not where you've been, but where you're going. Maybe it's, I am disciplined. Maybe it's, I am creative. Maybe it's, I am unstoppable. Put it somewhere you'll see it every day. Your mirror, your phone background, your journal. And every morning for the next 30 days, say it out loud with energy and belief. Even if it feels fake at first, your brain will begin to align your actions with your words. Remember, identity isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about stepping into the truth of who you could be if you stopped living by old limitations. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need someone to declare that you're worthy. You already are. The only thing left is for you to decide that the old story ends here, right now. In this moment, you're not lost. You've just been looking at the wrong map. And starting today, you're drawing a new one. Because the moment you change your identity, your direction changes. And when your direction changes, your destiny changes. That's how you go from lost to limitless. When we talk about transformation, most people imagine some big, dramatic leap, a total life overhaul where you wake up one morning and everything is different. But that's not how real change happens. The truth is, it's not the massive leaps that get you from lost to limitless. It's the small, consistent wins that stack on top of each other until one day you look back and realize you're standing somewhere completely new. The reason so many people stay stuck is because they underestimate the power of starting small. They think, if I can't run a marathon today, what's the point of walking around the block? But here's what they don't realize is small wins are not just progress, they're proof. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you're telling your brain, I can be trusted to keep my word. And that trust is the foundation of confidence. I worked with a woman once who told me she wanted to read more, but every time she tried to pick up a book, she'd get distracted or feel overwhelmed. Her mind would wander. She'd lose focus, and eventually she stopped trying altogether. When we started working together, I told her not to aim for an hour of reading, not even 20 minutes. I told her to commit to 1 page a day, that's it. 1 page. It felt almost silly to her, too small to matter, but she agreed. For the first week, she read her single page, sometimes 2. By the second week, she was reading a chapter. By the end of the month, she was finishing books. 6 months later, she was reading 1 book every week. What changed? Not her intelligence, not her schedule. What changed was that she started proving to herself that she could follow through. That's the magic of small wins. You have to understand, the human brain loves progress. It loves momentum, but it doesn't care how big the step is. It just needs a step. The problem is we overwhelm ourselves with huge, unrealistic expectations. We decide we're going to change everything overnight. We're going to eat perfectly, work out every day, wake up at 5 a.m., build a business, fix our relationships, learn a new language, and meditate for an hour, all starting Monday, and by Wednesday, we've collapsed under the weight of our own ambition. The disappointment sets in, the old story creeps back, and we tell ourselves, see, I knew I couldn't do it. But if you start small, so small you can't fail, you start building something that lasts. Think about it like this. A rocket uses most of its fuel just to lift off. Once it's in space, the momentum keeps it going with minimal effort. Small wins are that initial fuel. They give you the push you need to escape the gravity of your old habits. And once you're moving, staying in motion becomes natural. You start feeling proud of yourself. You start trusting yourself, and that trust turns into bigger actions, which turn into bigger results. Here's the emotional truth. Sometimes we avoid starting small because it feels like admitting we're not already where we want to be. It can feel humbling to say, I can only commit to 5 minutes a day, when deep down you want to change everything. But humility is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's saying, I'm willing to plant a seed today so I can grow a forest tomorrow. You don't get to the top of the mountain in one giant leap. You get there by taking step after step, even when the summit feels impossibly far away. I'll give you another example. A friend of mine was completely out of shape. Years of neglect had taken a toll, and he felt ashamed of how far he'd let things slide. He kept saying he'd join a gym when he was ready, but really, he was waiting to feel confident before taking action. I told him, don't wait to feel confident, act your way into confidence. So we started small, 5 push-ups a day, that's it. It felt ridiculous at first, but after a week, he was doing 10, then 20, then he added a short walk, then a jog. A year later, he was running 50Ks, not because he woke up one morning as an athlete, but because he proved to himself daily that he could keep a promise, even a tiny one. So here's your challenge. I want you to pick one area of your life where you've been feeling lost or stuck. It could be your health, your relationships, your finances, your learning, anything. Then I want you to commit to one small, specific action you can do every single day for the next 30 days. Not something overwhelming, not something you'll dread, but something so doable you'd be embarrassed not to follow through. If it's health, maybe it's drinking 1 more glass of water a day. If it's learning, maybe it's reading 2 paragraphs. If it's your relationships, maybe it's sending 1 thoughtful text to someone you care about. The point is to win daily. And when you do that, celebrate it. Yes, even the tiny wins. Give yourself credit. Your brain is wired to seek rewards, and when you acknowledge your progress, You reinforce the habit loop that keeps you going. Over time, you'll notice something incredible. Those small wins won't feel small anymore. They'll start stacking. They'll start compounding. And the person who once felt lost will start feeling capable, confident, and in control. Small wins are not the warm-up for your real life. They are your real life. They are the building blocks of every transformation story you've ever admired. Nobody goes from 0 to hero overnight. They go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2. And before you know it, they've climbed to a place they once thought was impossible. That's what's available to you right now. So don't wait for the perfect plan or the perfect moment. Start small. Start today. Start now. Because every big, limitless life is built on the foundation of 1,000 small, consistent victories. And your first one is just one choice away. When most people feel lost, they ask themselves questions that keep them exactly where they are. Questions like, why am I like this? Why does nothing work out for me? Why do I keep failing? The problem is your brain is like a supercomputer, and the questions you ask are the commands you give it. If you feed it a negative, disempowering question, it will search for a negative, disempowering answer. Ask, why am I such a failure? And your brain will gladly pull up every memory, every mistake, every moment you've fallen short. Ask, why can't I lose weight? And it will start listing all the reasons. You're lazy, you have no discipline. It's in your genetics. It's not because the brain hates you. It's because it's doing exactly what you told it to do. The quality of your life is directly linked to the quality of your questions. When I was younger, after my brain injury, my question was always, why can't I learn like other kids? Every day, my mind went to work finding proof, because you're broken, because you're slow, because something's wrong with you. And the more I asked that question, the more real it became to me. It wasn't until I learned to change my questions that everything started to change. Instead of asking, why can't I learn? I started asking, how can I learn this faster? How can I make this fun? How can I use this to help others? These new questions shifted my focus from limitation to possibility. They didn't magically solve my problems overnight, but they opened a door in my mind that had been shut for years. I once worked with a business owner who was completely burned out. She kept asking herself, why is my business failing? Every time she asked, her brain came up with an overwhelming list. The market's bad. I'm not a good leader. I'm bad at sales. These answers made her feel hopeless. We switched her question to, how can I make my business thrive in this market? That one change forced her brain to look for solutions instead of proof that she was doomed. Within weeks, she was brainstorming fresh ideas, experimenting with new marketing, and seeing results. The business didn't turn around because the economy changed. It turned around because her focus did. Your questions are powerful because they control your attention, and what you focus on expands. If you focus on what's wrong, you'll see more of what's wrong. If you focus on what's possible, you'll start noticing opportunities you missed before. This isn't magic, it's neuroscience. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, or RAS, which acts like a filter for the millions of pieces of information you could notice at any moment. The RAS decides what's important based on what you tell it to look for. If you keep asking disempowering questions, your RAS will keep filtering your reality to confirm your worst fears. But if you feed it better questions, it will filter your reality to find the resources, people, and ideas that can move you forward. Here's the emotional truth. Asking better questions is a choice you can make at any moment. Even when your circumstances haven't changed, you can be broke and still ask, how can I create income starting today? You can be heartbroken and still ask, how can I use this pain to grow? You can be stuck in a job you hate and still ask, what's one step I can take to build the career I want? The circumstances don't define you. The questions you ask in those circumstances do. I remember meeting a young man at one of my talks who told me he was stuck in life. He was living at home, unemployed, and had been rejected from every job he applied for. I asked him what question he was asking himself every day. He said, why would anyone hire me? That question was paralyzing him. We switched it to, how can I make myself irresistible to an employer? Suddenly, his brain had something to work with. Within a month, he had learned 2 new skills online, redesigned his resume, started networking, and landed a job. Nothing in the outside world changed until he changed the inner dialogue driving his behavior. Your call to action is simple, but it's going to require discipline. For the next 30 days, become aware of the questions you ask yourself, especially in moments of stress or doubt. When you catch yourself asking a why can't you question, stop and reframe it into a how can I question. Shift from blame to action, from limitation to possibility. If your mind says, why am I so unmotivated? Change it to, how can I get energized right now? If it says, why am I so bad with money? Change it to, how can I improve my finances starting today? Write these empowering questions down. Keep them on your phone. Repeat them until they become automatic. Understand that your brain is always looking for an answer. Make sure it's looking in the right place. When you change your questions, you change your focus. When you change your focus, you change your actions. And when you change your actions, you change your results. This is one of the fastest ways to go from feeling lost to feeling in control. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to start asking the questions that will lead you there. Because every great breakthrough begins not with knowing, but with asking, and the question you choose today could be the key that unlocks your limitless tomorrow. One of the biggest reasons people feel lost is not because they don't have dreams, ambition, or potential. It's because their focus is scattered. They want to move forward, but their attention is being pulled in 1,000 directions, and every distraction steals a little bit of their energy, their time, and their ability to follow through. In today's world, distraction is not just common, it's constant. Your phone, your notifications, your news feed, your emails, other people's emergencies, all of them are competing for your attention every single second. And if you don't take control of your focus, the world will decide for you where your attention goes. The problem is whatever gets your attention gets your life. If you keep giving your best attention to things that don't move you forward, you'll keep feeling stuck no matter how much effort you put in. The truth is, most people don't have a motivation problem, they have a focus problem. They say they're unmotivated, but in reality, they're simply too distracted to make progress. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if your attention is divided, your actions will be weak. Think about it like sunlight. When it's spread out, it's warm, pleasant, comfortable. But when you focus it through a magnifying glass, it's powerful enough to start a fire. That's what happens when you concentrate your attention on one important thing at a time. You create the heat and energy that can ignite massive results. I used to start my days like most people, checking my phone before I even got out of bed. Emails, texts, social media, news. And what I didn't realize was that I was training my brain to be reactive instead of proactive. Before I even had a chance to set my intentions for the day, I was already responding to other people's agendas. And every time I got pulled into a new notification, I was giving away a piece of my focus. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has dozens of holes. You can pour all you want, but you're never going to get it full. The day I decided to reclaim my mornings was the day everything changed. I made a rule: no phone, no email, no social media for the first hour after I wake up. That first hour is mine. I use it to move my body, feed my mind, and plan my day. That one change tripled my productivity, not because I was working harder, but because I was working with focus. I once worked with a young professional who told me she was constantly busy, but never made progress on her big goals. She was always multitasking, answering emails while on calls, working on her presentation while scrolling Instagram. She thought she was being efficient, but her brain was paying a huge price. Research shows that when you switch between tasks, you don't just lose the time it takes to refocus. You actually lose momentum, energy, and quality of work. When I challenged her to commit to focused work blocks, 45 minutes of deep, distraction-free work followed by a short break, her output doubled within 2 weeks. The same number of hours, but a completely different result, because her attention was no longer leaking away. The emotional truth is this: you can't feel powerful in your life if you're constantly letting little distractions control you. Every time you break your focus to check a notification, you're sending yourself a silent message that says, "This can wait, but that random ping on my phone is more important." You train your brain to expect constant novelty instead of sustained effort. And over time, you lose the ability to stay with the deep, important work long enough to see real results. This isn't just about productivity, it's about self-respect. It's about saying, my goals, my dreams, and my purpose deserve my full attention. So here's your call to action. Starting tomorrow, own the first hour of your day. No phone, no news, no social media. Use that hour to focus on your highest priority, whether it's working on your health, building a skill, or tackling your most important project. Next, I want you to identify your top 3 priorities for the day, just 3, and commit to doing them before you do anything else. Block out time on your calendar for deep, focused work on those priorities, and protect that time like it's a meeting with the most important person in your life, because it is you. When you sit down to work, remove as many distractions as possible. Close unnecessary tabs. Put your phone in another room if you have to. Use a timer to keep yourself in the zone. This might sound simple, but it's not easy, especially at first. You'll feel the itch to check your phone. You'll feel uncomfortable with the stillness. That's because your brain has been conditioned to seek constant stimulation. But the longer you stick with it, the stronger your focus muscle will become. And just like any muscle, the more you train it, the more powerful it gets. Over time, you'll notice you can work longer without getting distracted. You'll notice you're getting more done in less time. You'll notice that the work you're producing is deeper, better, and more meaningful. Imagine the compound effect of protecting your focus every single day for the next year. Imagine how much progress you could make if you started each morning in control of your attention instead of giving it away to the noise of the world. Imagine the confidence you'd feel knowing that when it's time to work on your dreams, you show up fully without splitting your energy in 1,000 directions. That's the shift that takes you from feeling lost to feeling limitless, not because you're doing more, but because you're doing the right things with your full attention. The truth is, your focus is your superpower in a distracted world. Guard it, strengthen it, use it, and you'll be amazed at how quickly everything else starts to fall into place. When people think about unlocking their potential, they often focus on working harder, putting in more hours, or just trying more. But the truth is, your brain is your greatest asset, and if you learn how to use it the right way, you can achieve more in less time with less effort. The problem is, most of us were never taught how to learn. We were told what to learn, but not how to do it efficiently, how to remember it, or how to make it stick. And if you've ever studied for hours only to forget everything the next day, you know how frustrating that can be. Feeling lost often comes from believing that you're just not smart enough, when in reality, you've simply never been shown the right tools to learn faster and remember more. One of the most powerful things I ever discovered is that memory is not something you have, it's something you do. It's a skill, and like any skill, it can be improved with practice. When I was younger, after my brain injury, I struggled to remember even the simplest things. Names, numbers, homework assignments, it was all a blur. I started believing there was something permanently wrong with me. But when I began learning memory techniques, everything shifted. I realized that my memory wasn't broken. I just didn't know how to use it. The techniques were like giving my brain a new operating system. Suddenly, things that used to take me hours to learn took minutes, and they stuck. One of my favorite techniques for remembering names is to turn them into a vivid image in your mind. If you meet someone named Rose, picture a giant, fragrant red rose blooming right out of their head. If you meet someone named Baker, imagine them in a chef's hat pulling fresh bread out of the oven. The more exaggerated and unusual the image, the better your brain will remember it. Why? Because our brains are wired to remember visuals and emotions far more easily than abstract information. This works for numbers. To turn them into shapes or link them to things you already know. I once met a businessman who told me he was terrible with names and always forgot them immediately. I taught him this technique, and at the very next networking event, he remembered the names of 20 people after just one introduction each. The people he met were blown away, and he told me it completely changed his confidence in social situations. That's the thing. When you remember someone's name, you make them feel seen and valued. And that connection opens doors in ways you can't imagine. But learning faster isn't just about memory tricks. It's also about how you take in and process information. Most people try to learn passively, just reading or listening without actively engaging with the material. The problem is, passive learning doesn't stick. Active learning is when you connect new information to something you already know when you explain it to someone else. When you visualize it, when you teach it. The more senses and emotions you engage, the more your brain pays attention, and the better it remembers. I worked with a college student who was failing a history course despite spending hours studying. He was highlighting pages, rereading chapters, and still forgetting everything on the test. I taught him to use the active recall method, reading a section, closing the book, and trying to recall everything he could without looking. He also started creating vivid mental images of historical events, almost like a movie in his mind. Within one semester, he went from failing to getting the highest grade in the class. His intelligence didn't change, his approach did. The emotional truth is that many people carry shame about their ability to learn. They think they're slow, they think their memory is bad, and they assume it's just the way they are. But your brain is like a muscle. It grows with the right exercise. The more you practice using it effectively, the better it performs, and the most exciting part, when you learn how to learn, every area of your life improves. Your career, your relationships, your confidence. You stop avoiding opportunities because you're afraid you won't be able to keep up. You start stepping into situations that challenge you because you know you can rise to meet them. Here's your call to action. Pick one memory or learning technique this week and use it daily. If it's remembering names, practice creating exaggerated mental images for every person you meet. If it's learning a skill, use active recall instead of passive review. If it's absorbing complex information, try linking it to something you already know, turning it into a story, or explaining it to someone else. The key is to stop thinking of your brain as something fixed and start treating it as a tool you can sharpen. Imagine how different your life would be if you could learn anything faster. Remember it longer and recall it whenever you needed it. That's not a fantasy. That's what happens when you work with your brain instead of against it. Every time you invest in learning how to learn, you're not just gaining knowledge, you're building the confidence that you can figure out whatever comes next. And when you have that kind of confidence, you stop feeling lost, you start feeling limitless, because you know that no matter where you are or what challenge you face, you have the most powerful resource in the world sitting right between your ears, and you know exactly how to use it. If you've ever tried to make a big change in your life, you've probably noticed something strange. You can be full of motivation, have a clear plan, and even start strong. But if the people and environments around you don't support that change, it becomes almost impossible to sustain. That's because your environment is either pulling you forward or pulling you back, and most people underestimate just how powerful that pull is. You can have the best intentions, but if you're surrounded by constant negativity, distraction, or temptation, your willpower will eventually give out. Willpower is like a battery. It drains throughout the day. But if your environment is designed to support you, you don't have to rely on willpower alone. You make success your default instead of your uphill battle. When I was younger and trying to rebuild my brain after my injury, I realized something important. I was spending time with people who didn't believe in me. They weren't bad people, but their vision of me was limited to the labels I'd been given. Every time I tried to stretch myself, they'd say things like, "Are you sure you can do that?" Or, "That's not really your thing." And without realizing it, I started shrinking my dreams to fit their expectations. It wasn't until I intentionally started surrounding myself with people who believed in my potential, people who encouraged me to try, to fail, to grow, that my confidence started to expand. There's a saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. That's not just about money or success. It's about mindset, energy, habits. If you spend your time with people who complain constantly, who see obstacles instead of opportunities, who settle for good enough, it's almost impossible not to absorb that thinking. But if you spend your time with people who push themselves, who see possibility in everything, who take action even when it's uncomfortable, you start adopting those same patterns. You begin to normalize excellence instead of mediocrity. Your environment isn't just the people, it's also the physical spaces you spend time in. If your home or workspace is full of clutter, distractions, and reminders of unfinished tasks, your brain is constantly under low-level stress. You may not even notice it, but it's like background noise draining your mental energy. On the other hand, if your space is clean, organized, and designed with your goals in mind, it sends a powerful signal to your brain. This is a place where I focus. This is a place where I win. I worked with a client who wanted to eat healthier but kept falling back into old habits. When we looked at her environment, the problem was obvious. Her kitchen was full of junk food, and every time she walked in, it was the first thing she saw. We reorganized her kitchen so that healthy snacks were visible and accessible, and the unhealthy ones were out of sight or gone completely. She didn't suddenly develop more willpower. She just changed the cues in her environment so that the healthy choice became the easy choice. Within a month, she had lost weight without feeling like she was constantly fighting herself. The emotional truth is that making these changes can be hard, because sometimes it means stepping back from people who have been in your life for years. It doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It means you set boundaries to protect your growth. If someone is constantly negative, you can limit the time you spend with them or shift the topics you discuss. If your environment is full of triggers that pull you into old habits, you can start small by changing one thing at a time. You don't have to rebuild your entire world overnight, but you do have to take ownership of it. Here's your call to action. Audit your environment this week. Start with the people. Write down the 5 people you spend the most time with. Do they inspire you, challenge you, and support your goals? Or do they drain your energy, feed your doubts, and keep you comfortable in mediocrity? You don't have to cut people off completely, but you may need to consciously increase the time you spend with those who lift you up and decrease the time with those who pull you down. Next, look at your physical environment. Is it set up to make your desired habits easier or harder? If you want to work out in the morning, are your workout clothes ready and visible? If you want to read more, is there a book on your nightstand instead of your phone? If you want to eat better, are healthy foods the first thing you see when you open the fridge? This isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. The more your environment aligns with your goals, the less you have to fight yourself to make progress. And here's the thing, when you surround yourself with people who believe in you and create spaces that support you, something shifts inside. You start to believe in yourself more. You start to see your goals not as distant dreams, but as natural outcomes of the life you've built. That's when momentum kicks in. That's when change stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling inevitable. Imagine a year from now, waking up in a space that energizes you, spending time with people who inspire you, and moving through a day where your environment is constantly nudging you toward the person you want to become. That's not luck, that's design. And the moment you take responsibility for your environment, both the people in it and the spaces you live in, You take responsibility for your future. Because when your environment is limitless, you are limitless, and you'll never have to feel lost again. There comes a moment in every transformation when you realize the journey is no longer just about you. In the beginning, you focus on fixing your own struggles, breaking your own limitations, building your own confidence. But as you rise, you begin to notice something powerful. You're not just changing your own life, you're influencing the lives of the people around you. And the true mark of going from lost to limitless is when you take what you've learned, what you've earned, and what you've become and use it to lift others. Because growth that ends with you is incomplete. Real fulfillment comes when you become the spark for someone else's change. I remember speaking to a young man after one of my events. He told me he'd been homeless for months, battling depression, and had stumbled into my talk by accident. He wasn't even supposed to be there. But something I said made him believe, for the first time in years, that he could rewrite his story. He found a job, started reading again, and rebuilt his life. But here's what stayed with me: he didn't stop there. He began volunteering at a youth center, mentoring teenagers who were heading down the same dark path he'd been on. His transformation became a chain reaction. He went from surviving to leading, from lost to limitless, not because he hoarded his success, but because he shared it. When you help others rise, you reinforce your own growth. Teaching something forces you to understand it deeply. Supporting someone through their struggles reminds you of the strength you've built. It keeps you grounded, grateful, and committed to your own progress. And in a world full of cynicism, negativity, and doubt, every act of encouragement is like planting a seed in someone's heart. You may never see it grow, but it can change the course of their life. The emotional truth is that many people are walking through life feeling invisible, unheard, and hopeless. You might not realize it, but your words, your example, and your energy can be the very thing that keeps someone going. Think about that. The way you choose to live could silently inspire someone who's watching you from the sidelines. They might never tell you, but your courage gives them courage. Your consistency gives them belief. Your decision to break through your limits shows them it's possible for them too. It doesn't have to be grand or public. Maybe it's mentoring a younger colleague who reminds you of yourself years ago. Maybe it's helping a friend start their fitness journey because you know how much it changed your own life. Maybe it's starting a small online community where people can share wins and push each other forward. You don't have to wait until you're perfect or ready. You simply have to be willing to share what you know. Be honest about your struggles and show up for others. Here's your call to action. Think of 3 people in your life right now who could benefit from your encouragement, your knowledge, or your example. Reach out to them this week, not to preach at them, but to listen, to understand, and to remind them of their own strength. Maybe share a book that inspired you. Invite them to join you in a healthy habit, or simply let them know you believe in them. Then, commit to doing this regularly, not just once. Make it part of your identity to lift others. When you make helping others a natural extension of your growth, you create a ripple effect that extends far beyond what you can see. Your influence travels into places you'll never visit, into conversations you'll never hear, into lives you'll never directly touch. And yet, it matters. The world becomes a little brighter, a little stronger, a little braver because you chose not to keep your transformation to yourself. And here's the ultimate reward: the more you give, the more you grow. Every time you invest in someone else's potential, you expand your own. Every time you see someone break through because of your support, you're reminded of the power you hold. You go from being someone who needed saving to someone who saves, from searching for a light to becoming the light. So imagine this a year from now. You're not just living your limitless life, you're surrounded by people you've helped rise. They're building businesses, creating art, chasing dreams, and pushing boundaries, all because you chose to reach back and pull them forward. That's legacy, that's impact, and that's what it truly means to go from lost to limitless. Because when you lift others, you don't just change their world, you change the world. And in doing so, you'll find that your own journey has only just begun.